through it, don't worry.
Oh, okay, thank you.
All right. Good morning, and thank you all for joining us for To Be a Mensch. You're in for a treat this morning. At least I really connected with this Mishnah, so hopefully I can give it over with the same enthusiasm that when I heard it, how I enjoyed it when I studied it. So before we dive into the Mishnah, first of all, let me apologize for the past 2 weeks. I know that we had like a shorter class and less in depth, etc. On account of the move, I didn't want to cancel the class, but I gave it and it was a little bit less in depth. So let me catch up on one thing that we studied. One thing I would have liked to share last week and 2 weeks ago, which is as follows. Where we are in Pirkei Avot, we are studying chapter 2 of Ethics of Our Fathers, as we've been doing since the beginning of the year. We're doing each Mishnah, one Mishnah per day or half a Mishnah per day, etc. And the Pirkei Avot started off, so we're in chapter 2, we're in Mishnah Hey, the 5th Mishnah. For those of you that have the Pirkei Avot that we use, I know a few of you have it, it's on page 56. What I want to share was as follows. When we started Pirkei Avot, there's a stress put on the tradition. In other words, how it goes through chronologically through the rabbis from Moshe Rabbeinu, until, as the Torah was being passed down through the Mishnah, generation after generation of scholar who led the Jewish people and what they shared with us, etc. And we've endeavored every week to try and show how it's connected to the author. That of course, he taught many things throughout his life, but this particular Mensch thought or ethical teaching connects directly to who he was, etc. That order got a little bit messed up 2 weeks ago when we quoted Hillel for the first time. Now Hillel, there's actually a disagreement between some of the rabbis as to who exactly this Hillel was. Now why am I sharing this today? Because it started 2 weeks ago when we were sharing from him then, but it continues into this week. This Mishnah continues Hu Haya Omer, he used to say, and of course you see that in the translation they added in Hillel, because this is Hillel. And next week as well is also going to be a story with Hillel. There's a little bit of a disagreement as to who this Hillel was. The simpler translation of this would be that this is a Hillel, especially because in some versions, not in our version, but in some versions of the Pirkei Avot, he is referred to as Reb Hillel, which is very uncommon for the famous Hillel who argued against Shammai. Right. So according to those opinions, this Hillel is actually the son of Rabbi Gamliel, who was the son of Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, and again, it's continuing in chronological order, and he was who led the Jewish people through the next generation. However, even according to those opinions who say that this is the Hillel who argued against Shammai, which would make him the grandfather of the Rabbi Gamliel, who we recently quoted from, it's still going in chronological order with this exception. Okay? This exception is that Hillel is the grandfather of Rabbi Gamliel, and it's quoting him because he's going to help us understand, particularly with the quote that he said last week, which was Al Tifresh min hatzibur, don't separate from the congregation, and in general, how to lead as a community leader. He said before that he said, have a zahirin barashut, which means be careful with those in power, right? Be wary around those in power, which really continues with what Rabbi Gamliel was teaching us about how to be a proper communal Jewish leader. In other words, not so much obviously a Jewish leader, but also how to be a communal Jewish leader who deals with political affairs, etc. And that immediately after this exception to the rule, it will continue to go chronologically, as we'll see. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was one of the students of Hillel, and then from him to all of his students, until the end of this chapter, we're going to quote from 5 students of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So I just want to share that point, just to kind of catch us up to scratch. But now, on to the Mishnah itself. Yosef Ilan, you want to start us off by reading the text of the Mishnah itself?
Sure. A boor, an ignorant, rough, and uncivilized person, cannot be one who fears sin. An learned person cannot be a hasid, one who is extra careful with the Torah and mitzvot. One who is too shy to ask questions cannot learn. A person who is easily angered cannot teach, and neither can all who spend much time on business matters become wise in Torah knowledge. In place where there are no leaders, try hard to be a leader yourself.
Okay, a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
Let's start off by pointing out that at the end of this Mishnah, again, we see, so for those that believe that this is Hillel, the grandfather of Rabbi Gamliel, and say that this is out of order, this goes to show, again, he's teaching us about communal leadership and how to be a proper leader. So that would be why it's out of order. But let's unpack this Mishnah one statement at a time, right? An unlearned person cannot, a bore cannot be one who fears sin. An unlearned person cannot be a chassid. Someone who's too shy cannot learn. A person who is easily angered cannot teach. And anybody who spends too much time doing business cannot acquire Torah knowledge. And then we'll get to the last one. So it's teaching us that if you have a certain, there's, another way of putting this Mishnah is that each of these professions or each of these roles requires a particular quality to shine. And that quality must shine in abundance in order for you to gain that role or to acquire this virtue that the Mishnah is teaching us. Let's unpack them one at a time. Number one, a bore. So a bore, here they translate as an ignorant, rough, and uncivilized person, and that is the common translation. But actually the Alter Rebbe shares that it's not necessarily somebody who is unlearned in Torah, in other words, ignorant, or that rough or that uncivilized. The Alter Rebbe teaches that it really means anybody who is rough in the fact that he does not allow his Torah, he does not allow his upbringing to affect himself. It does not allow his fear of heaven to actually penetrate and become one with who he is. And that's why he can never have true fear of sin. Fear of sin or fear of heaven is considered a tremendous value, that a person should actually be afraid of sinning. And so the Alter really translates this one, which really works in line with Hasidus, because some other commentary would say, oh, a bore just means someone who doesn't have enough Torah knowledge, someone who was born into an unlearned family, he never had a chance to learn Torah, he can never be someone who fears sin. The Alter Rebbe says it's not so much about your circumstance, right? Hasidus was always against that. Hasidus says even the simplest
who you are
can achieve their greatness. The Alter Rebbe shares that no. This has a lot more to do with how much you allow it to affect you. And when you actually allow it to come in, he says that's what the bore in this Mishnah means. A bore means someone who is not allowing the Torah and Hasidus to affect him internally, and that's why he can never acquire true fear of sin.
Yeah.
So that's for the first statement. Number two, an unlearned person cannot become a chassid. This is an interesting one. The term here uses am haaretz, which means a person of the land, in other words, a simpleton, and he can never become a chassid. So this is an interesting statement because let's start backwards. What is a chassid? So a chassid means someone who goes above the letter of the law in order to do something. In general, Pirkei Avot is considered mila de chasidusa, right? The words of a chassid, or the advice to follow if you want to be a chassid, if you want to go beyond the letter of the law. Most of what is discussed in Ethics of Our Fathers, which we've been in the middle of studying, is teachings that don't help you do the letter of the law. That's Shulchan Aruch, that's the Jewish code of law, but rather they help you go above the letter of the law. So what we're saying here, and Rabbi Ovadia Bar Tanura says immediately, he says, what we mean by an am haaretz, he says, is think about what we use, not what we use, what we will use later in chapter 5. Many of you are probably familiar with this Mishnah already, and this is the Mishnah which talks about what's mine is yours, what's yours is mine, right? All of this. Right. Who is considered an am haaretz? Who is considered a simpleton? A simpleton is someone who says what's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine. In other words, he has no value at all for advantageous relationships with others. This is the basis of civilization, of being a person of this earth. And if a person doesn't understand that, a person thinks that everything is all over the place. There's no regard for my ownership of things, no regard for your ownership of things. That's his problem. That's why he'll never be able to be a chassid, because he doesn't understand that there's a certain amount of respect we have to have for other people. There's a certain amount of respect we have to have for someone else's feelings, for someone else's position here, etc. Again, this is not talking about him. He may not go around stealing, but he doesn't have a value for the fact that in order for us to live together in a society, we sometimes have to go beyond because we want other people to go beyond for ourselves. Does that make sense?
Civilization.
I guess that's one way of putting it. Okay.
He's more like a wild animal then.
Fair enough. Yeah. At least in certain regards.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's dive into one who is too shy to ask questions, cannot learn. Okay. So this is an interesting one because, even the term in this Mishnah that's used, which is V'lo habaishan, right? V'lo habaishan lamid, someone who is too shy, cannot learn. You know that term baishan is usually, does anybody recognize it as being a positive quality? Steve, Ron, you guys here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Do you remember anywhere in Torah where this term is used as a positive quality, habaishan, to be a shy person? Here we're using it as a negative quality. We're saying you'll never learn.
Moses.
Moses was humble. Humble and shy should not be conflated. It's a very big difference. Okay, so let's dive right into it right now. So we actually find sometimes that we're encouraged to be shy, and sometimes we're encouraged not to be shy. Famously, the Talmud tells us, I think it's in Yevamos, I believe, that there are three qualities which define the Jewish people: Baishanim, Rachmanim, and Gomei Chasadim. That first one, Baishanim, means to be bashful, to be shy. We're encouraged to be bashful people. You shouldn't always be the first person to jump up and say, "Oh, I know it, and I know what I'm talking about." Take it easy. Be bashful, be quiet, because that will very often, and we all know this from our own experiences in life, right? Those people are usually not the people who know what they're talking about. If you want the answer to a question, you usually go over to someone who's quiet on the side and just keeping to himself. They usually know the answer to the question. They usually know what they're talking about, etc. So that's why being bashful is considered a good quality in terms of being a Jew. However, the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, and then again in Shulchan Aruch, this is quoted, this is brought down. We're told that there's four animals that we should be, right? These are famous. That's why I'm giving you the context because I think you recognize. There are four animals that we're told to replicate, right? And one of them is the leopard. Does anybody remember what? Right? So we're supposed to replicate the deer, to be swift as a deer, be strong as a lion. The leopard, we're supposed to replicate in the fact that the leopard is bold. I don't know enough about how the leopard hunts its prey, but I'd imagine that there's something bold here where it attacks those that are even, above their status, etc. So we're told to be bold as a leopard. So so clearly we're supposed to have some sort of medium between being bold and being bashful. Where is that medium? This Mishnah clarifies that for us a little bit. When it comes to general life, be bashful. Don't be the first to stick your head up. Don't, walk around showing off for the whole world, etc. What I guess we would call being bold. However, welcome Stephanie. However, when it comes to Torah learning, and the truth is the Mishnah, I'll take it back a little bit because the Mishnah doesn't say here with regards to Torah learning, although presumably learning means Torah. When it comes to learning, we cannot be bashful. We have to challenge, we have to question, whatever it is that we learn in the Torah, we should always be challenging and questioning it. This has nothing to do with, it shouldn't take away from our faith in the Torah, believing that the Torah is godly, but it does help us learn. When we were children, we were always given a simple example. If you're too bashful to ask a question, you will never get the answer to your question, right? If someone is sitting right now in this classroom and has some sort of challenge or some sort of question, some sort of misunderstanding as to what I'm saying, and they're too hesitant to unmute themselves, right? The coronavirus equivalent of this Mishnah is someone who is afraid to unmute themselves will never learn, right?
I got a question.
I knew I would wake up some questions. Yeah, go for it.
You see that dot above the yud?
Above the yud. In Habaishan, right here?
Yes.
Yes.
Above the yud. What is that?
Yeah. We could talk about it. It's really very technical. The yud has a shiva underneath it. Do you see that?
Yeah.
The shiva is from the most complicated vowels, if not the most complicated vowel in the Hebrew language. And it has many exceptions and meaning there are many rules which dictate whether it's vocalized or not vocalized. So do you say habaishan or do you say habayishan? Those of you that were in my Hebrew reading class will definitely remember that. Now, if we were to be the best grammarians in the world, we would know it without asterisk. Meaning, I think that's an asterisk. I don't think it's a dot. I think it's a star. I don't know. But in any event, in modern Sidurim and Chumashim and in this case, Pirkei Avot, they'll put those dots there for you so that you know when to vocalize it and when not to vocalize it.
Oh, okay.
So it's really a very technical thing.
All right.
But look at that. He wasn't bashful and he learned something.
Well, we don't know if he learned it, but he at least.
Oh, I learned it. I
heard.
learned it.
Oh, he learned it. Okay. All right. So, let's talk about when should you be bashful, when should you be bold. You should be bashful when it comes to social interactions with other people, right? We should be bold when it comes to Torah and to studying and to putting ourselves forward. The prime example of this is Rabbi Akiva. Right? Rabbi Akiva is one of the most bold learners that we know. Some people are not familiar with all of the details of Rabbi Akiva's story. And actually, let me see if I still have it open when I was preparing, because this would be nice to read inside. Let's see if I still have it open. I don't have it open, but...
The Torah symbolizes the Yeshua.
This Torah symbolizes what? I'm sorry, Andrea, you muted yourself. I didn't hear the question. Yeah, go ahead.
The Torah symbolizes the Yeshua, right? It's a symbol of the powers that be.
Of Hashem?
Yeah, the Torah. The Torah symbolizes the Yeshua.
The
Torah. The
symbolizes what?
The Yeshua.
The Yesha?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean the Shiva? The Shiva?
Yeah, the Torah is a symbol of the Yeshua, right? Like the powers that be is like the Torah is a symbol of that.
The Torah is the wisdom of Hashem that's written down in the 5 books of Moses, in the Bible, but as well as the oral Torah, which accompanies it, which is the tradition that we've received from our parents and our forefathers, etc. So that's the Torah. That's what the Torah is.
The Torah is like it symbolizes the Yeshua, and that's why you keep it very special in the closet, right?
I don't know what Yesha means.
Yeah, like the Yeshua, the powers that be.
I apologize, Andrea. I don't know what Yesha means. But the Torah is very special, and that's why we keep it inside the ark. Okay, so let me share with you here. I'm going to stop this share, and I'll share with you this text I read about Rabbi Akiva. Okay, I want you guys to bear in mind that we're always told that Rabbi Akiva was. We're always told that Rabbi Akiva started learning at 40 years old. We know that about him. But Ron, you want to give us a little bit more about the origin of Rabbi Akiva, and you'll see just how bold he was and how he was never bashful to ask any questions. You want to read for us, Ron?
Yes. Okay. What were the origins of Rabbi Akiva? They say that he was 40 years old and he had still not learned anything. Once he was standing at the mouth of a well, and he said, "Who carved a hole in this stone?" They said to him, "It is from the water, which constantly falls on it day after day, day after day." And they said, "Akiva, don't you know this from the verse in Job 14:19 verse? Water erodes stones." Rabbi Akiva immediately applied this all the more so to himself. He said, if something soft can carve something hard, then all the more so the words of Torah, which are like steel, can engrave themselves on my heart, which is but flesh and blood. He immediately went to start studying Torah. He went with his son, and they sat down.
Hey, here's the crucial part, okay? Till now, I'm assuming everybody's familiar with. Till now is quoted in the Talmud. This next section is from Avos to Rav Nassim. That's what we're reading here. So that's one of the commentary on Pirkei Avot. Go ahead. Look at how he did this.
He went with his son, and they sat down by the school teachers. He said to one, "Rabbi, teach me Torah." He then took hold of one end of the tablet, and his son took hold of the other end. The teacher wrote down Aleph and a base for him, and he learned them. Aleph to Tav, and he learned them. The book of Leviticus, and he learned it. And he went on studying until he learned the whole Torah. Then he went and sat before Rabbi.
Don, before you continue, I just want you all to imagine to yourself that you were this teacher. Okay? You're a first grade teacher, and in walks the parent of one of your students, a 40-year-old. He sits down next to the student, and he says, "All right, I'm another one of your students. right? Think about the boldness that takes. This is what we're talking about in our Mishnah when we say, you have to be bold in order to study Torah. But he didn't stop there. Once he knew the Aleph base, and once he knew Hebrew, he moved on to the great academies of the time. Go ahead.
He was a leopard.
And he went on studying until he learned the whole Torah. Then he went and sat before Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Joshua. My masters, he said, open up the sense of the Mishnah to me. When they told him one law, he went off and sat down to work it out for himself. This Aleph was, what was it written for? That bait, what was it written for? Why was this thing said? He kept coming back and kept asking them until he reduced his teachers to silence. Rabbi
You understand? He studied so hard and he challenged so much and he reduced his teachers to silence. Go for it.
Wait a minute, I lost my place.
Yeah,
I'm at the top. Now you're at the top here. I scrolled.
Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar said, I will give you a parable to tell you what this was like a stonecutter who was hacking away at the mountain. One time he took his pickaxe in his hand and went and sat on top of the mountain and began to chip small stones away from it. Some people came by and asked him, what are you doing? He said to them, I'm going to uproot the mountain and throw it into the Jordan. They said to him, you cannot uproot the entire mountain. But he kept hacking away until he came to a big boulder. So he wedged himself underneath it, pried it loose, and threw it into the Jordan. And he said to it, your place is not here, but there. This is what Rabbi Akiva did to Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Tarfon. Rabbi Tarfon said to him, Akiva, it is about you that the verse says in Job. He stops up the stream so that the hidden things may be brought to light. Rabbi Akiva has brought to light things which are kept hidden from human beings.
Thank you very much, Ron. That's where we'll stop. I mean, the rest of the story is also fascinating. But that's where we'll stop with the story of Rabbi Akiva. But I think in English, really the only word for Rabbi Akiva would be relentless. I mean, look, I also look at this story and I say kudos to his teachers, right? Because, and the reason I should is because it's going to lead directly into the next lesson about how to be a proper teacher from a Torah perspective, which is, v'lo hakapten melamed, you have to have patience. A person who is easily angered cannot teach. So Rabbi Akiva was being the ultimate student, which is to be bold. Like Arnold said, he was quite a leopard. He was relentless. He wouldn't let anything slip through. And any question that he had, he asked it. And even if it wasn't his place, like he was sitting in his first grade teacher's, his first grade child's classroom, he would sit there and that's where he would be. And he didn't mind. He would be bold. He wouldn't be embarrassed. But on the other hand, teachers, right, have to have a different quality. Their quality is patience, right? We have to make sure that if you're teaching Torah, you have to be patient. I think definitely Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Eliezer, who were Rabbi Akiva's teachers, are a great example. Another example is David HaMelech. David HaMelech famously asked question after question after question of his teacher, who was a man by the name of Mephibosheth. That's another example of someone who was bold. But let's talk about the teachers, right? So teachers have to have patience. And one of the reasons for that is because if a teacher is not patient and he's easily angered, there are many instances in which a teacher can be angered and maybe even rightfully so. Note how I put that in air quotes, angered. Oh, this person is not learning quick enough for my tastes. He doesn't have the right mental capacity. She's asking silly questions, etc. If a teacher gets angry or is impatient, then their students will never be able to learn. And that's obviously the simple face value translation of what's going on over here. My favorite explanation of this comes from Knesset Yisrael, where he explains that it's particularly a Torah teacher. Torah teachers are not just supposed to be people that give over information. Many of you on this class have been to college, and primarily the role of a professor is to give over information, right? I once shared the story of Aristotle. I don't remember the details, that they once found him doing something immoral. Steve, you remember the details of the story?
I know about it, yeah. I don't remember the details.
Steve, do you remember the details of the story?
A little bit.
I forget the details. They found Aristotle doing something immoral, and they asked him, "What is this?" And he said, there's what I teach, and then there's what I do. Don't learn from what I teach. Don't learn from what I do. The Torah famously takes the opposite approach, right? That a Torah teacher is not just supposed to be somebody who knows more Torah than his students, but should also be somebody who has allowed the Torah to affect him. He should be a more refined person because the words of Torah have actually entered him. So the Knesset Yisrael shears, in his commentary on Pirkei Avot, he shears that the reason that a person who's easy to anger will not be able to teach is because one of the things that he's trying to teach is not to get angry too quickly. He's trying to teach patience. It's one of the virtues of the Torah that we're trying to give over. And if he's not doing it, how will his students ever pick it up properly? Moving along, the next statement of the Mishnah is,
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you, Andrea. You have a question?
Yes, I was wondering,
Go ahead.
when it comes to teaching, patience is what matters so much, not to, if you don't understand things, to explain it more clearly.
Absolutely.
And something about teaching, I wonder, is that the attention that someone gives to you, not to judge that person, but to be of that person. You know what I mean?
That is absolutely true. And that's the point we're making here about being slow to anger. We have to learn to be patient with our students. First of all, we should be patient with everyone around us. We have to be patient with our students and to value them for who they are, which is a potential everything, right? They have the potential to be anything and to be the greatest scholar and to learn everything that can be learned. We should value that potential and therefore not lose any patience. So thank you, Andrea, for sharing with us.
Yes, thank you.
Moving on to the last statement of the Mishnah, or the second to last statement of the Mishnah, nor can anyone greatly absorbed in business grow wise. This is an interesting one, and I guess one just by way of example, I want to share an interesting story which is quoted in the Masechta Tainis, which is about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. He's one of the next, if not the next, no. After one more Mishnah, or two more Mishnahs, we're going to talk about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was the student. He was the youngest student of Hillel. And what he shares with us is, we'll talk about what he shares with us at that time. But Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's story actually has an interesting a tangent in the middle of his life that many are not familiar with. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai famously was the rabbi. He had 5 great students. He taught us so much. He was the youngest student of the Academy of Hillel. He's the one, for those of you that were on Wine and Wisdom this past week, he's the one who pretended to be dead during the destruction of the Second Temple, during the siege on Jerusalem. And they snuck him past the sentries, the Roman guards. They brought him to Vespasian, and he asked for Yavne v'chachameh. He asked that the city of Yavne with its Torah scholars should be kept. This is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, in the middle of his Torah career, couldn't support himself. So him and his colleague, whose name was Ilfa, they couldn't support their families, so they had to put aside their Torah study, and they started to engage in business. And once, as they were resting along the road, the two of them together, and they had their backs up against the wall, and Rabbi Yochanan heard the ministering angels speaking to each other. One says to the other, he says, "Let's throw down this wall upon these men and kill them." Why? Because, and we find this all the time in the Talmud, this accusation. They're leaving aside an occupation which can give them eternal life, in other words, the study of Torah, in order to go deal with something that can only give them temporary life, which is business, which supports our families here in this physical world. But the true thing they should be dedicating themselves is to the eternal life, which is the Torah. The other angel replied, "Leave them be, for one of them will become great, and his hour to die has not yet arrived." And this dialogue had such a profound effect on Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai that he recognized the point of this Mishnah, which is that someone who spends too much time doing business will never become a Talmid Chacham, will never become a Torah scholar. He let go of his business career. He started to pursue the Torah, and then he went on to become the famous Rabbi Yochanan that we're all familiar with. And lastly, the Mishnah shares with us that in a place where there are no people, you should strive to be a man. In other words, So again, let's do the face value explanation, then we'll do a deeper explanation, which comes from the Medrash Shmuel. The face value explanation here is, we've all been in this situation. You're with a group of people, and something is going on, and you feel like protesting, but you see to yourself, nobody else is doing anything. Why should I be the one to do something, right? And the Torah reminds us, no, be bold, be strong, step forward. If no one else is being a man, you should be a man, right? Whether that's here they translate it as leaders, but the literal translation is to be a man. But the Medrash Shmuel, which is a Medrash on Pirkei Avot, on Medrash of others, shares with us as follows. He says, some people have a problem that it's easy for them to be pious, it's easy for them to be religious, it's easy for them to follow the Torah when there's other people around. There's other people around them. He says, in a physical place, when you're in a place, your house or your place of whatever it is, and there's nobody else watching, your spouse is not there, your friends are not there, your community is not there, nobody's watching you, are you a man there? That's the place where you show your true colors, who you truly are, and that's where you should strive to be a moral person and a righteous person, etc. And that is this week's Mishnah Hey, the 5th Mishnah of the 2nd chapter of Pirkei Avot. Thank you all for joining us. Any questions, or we leave it as is?
It was good.
Thank you.
Don't be bashful.